The Delny was the Tier 8 tech tree ship to which I was most looking forward, and those of you who watched my channel for a long time probably know why, because you know I love the Soviet destroyers Khabarovsk and Tashkent for their mini cruiser-style gameplay that involves long-range spamming of the guns. It's one of my more favorite playstyles in the game, and the Delny is perfectly capable of playing in that style. For all intents and purposes, the Delny is an improved version of the Tier 7 Tashkent. The hulls of the two ships even look similar. They might even be the same, although there are some differences, not just down to the aesthetics, because the Delny does, after all, look visually different than the Tashkent, despite similar hull shapes. But, like the Tashkent, it has 6 130mm guns. The only difference is these guns on the Delny reload quicker at base than they do on the Tashkent, so you can get the reload down to a very, very comfortable 3 seconds or so, which is quite potent if you go with Vladimir Trubetskoy. And also, like the Tashkent, the Delny has 8-kilometer torpedoes, although these torpedoes go faster than the Tashkents. You can see here we've launched them according to the RPF indicator that we get for running the perceptive skill, because we aren't actually using Trubetskoy right now, we're using Gurin. More on that in a little bit, but those torpedoes are going to turn out to be very lucrative, as you will see here. I don't know if I mentioned, though, despite the fact that these Soviet mini-cruisers excel in long-range gunfights, the Tashkent's base gun range is actually longer than the Delny's. Using the actual same commander build with Vladimir Trubetskoy and the Fight Fire with Fire skill that both increases the main gun's fire chance and maximum range, I'm able to get the Tashkent's max gun range out to 13.6 kilometers, I want to say. With the Delny, it's a maximum of like 12.7, 12.6, so about a kilometer difference, and honestly, I don't know what to make of that. I feel like this destroyer should have more maximum gun range than the Tashkent, given that it's a tier higher, but it does have a faster reload on the guns, and along the middle of its hull, it's got a giant 50mm plate of armor, much like the Khabarovsk at Legendary tier. So that 50mm of plating is perfectly capable of shattering the high explosive shells of every single destroyer you are ever going to face in this game. So if they're shooting high explosive at you, and it hits your broadside, makes contact with that 50mm plate, it will simply shatter and do no damage. And as you can see, I'm able to get 25,000 hit points on the Delny using William Sims as an inspiration. So between those extra hit points and the 50mm armor plate, the Delny, much like the Khabarovsk, is quite tanky. And if you don't like the Khabarovsk, but you do like the Tashkent because of the torpedoes, then you're probably gonna like this ship a lot more than you do the Khabarovsk. Personally, the Khabarovsk remains my favorite, but the Delny is quite fun. Now, the reason I ended up going with my Gurin build, which I'll show you here, rather than my Trubetskoy build, which I'll show you after that, is essentially because of the gun range. With Gurin and his sidestep skill, I can get these guns shooting out to over 13 kilometers. And while Trubetskoy's Fight Fire with Fire skill does also extend the gun range, it doesn't extend it that far, and while it does increase the fire chance to absurd levels, you can get the fire chance using that Trubetskoy skill on these guns up to 16%, which is absolutely outrageous. But I just think having that little bit of extra range is a little bit more useful on this ship after I've played it for several games, and it's not like the fire chance is bad. You can see we've already managed to light 4 fires, and we are running Gurin's legendary skill called Fight Fire with Fire, which I think gives us an extra 2% chance to start a fire, putting us at, I think, about 10%. And really, that's good enough for my purposes. Then, of course, Gurin does have the base trait of increasing armor-piercing shell penetration by something like 7% when he's fully maxed. So I think that makes the AP shells on this ship a little bit more spicy. And I don't know whether this Bismarck is AFK or what, but as you can see, we're going to be farming him here in his broadside, and we're able to get probably at least half the shells we hit to penetrate, as long as they actually hit his superstructure, and they will cause more reliable and consistent damage than merely our high explosive. You can see right now we're up to about 76,000 damage done, and yeah, I guess this Bismarck is AFK. I don't know exactly what's going on. In fact, I think 3 of the enemy ships went AFK in this game, which is going to result in a little bit of a clean sweep for my team in particular. And normally, I really don't like to show these kind of games because they aren't very dynamic or boring, but you guys can let me know what you think in the comments section. Seems like after an update drops, the number of games that end in clean sweeps, regardless of whether players are AFK or not, well, they seem to increase in frequency anytime an update drops, and that's where I'm sort of at. It is kind of hard to get the exciting, closer games that I typically like to show on my channel. But as we move out here with the Delny, I do have a little bit of housekeeping that I want to get out of the way. Some of you might have noticed that I attempted to do a low-quality test stream last night at like midnight or 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think about 20 of you showed up in the chat or so. That was a test stream to see if I had learned how to use the Streamlabs software, which I have. I just have some bugs to iron out in order to get the quality of the stream better. I was having some problems with the bitrate. I think I need to set the bitrate higher, and I also think I need to make sure my actual PC is wired physically to my modem. I was trying it over Wi-Fi, which is a bad idea, but I should have all the bugs ironed out, and that should improve the quality of future streams, which is something I'm quite excited about, and I hope you are too. I want to get the things like, you know, the chat to show up on the actual stream footage. Seems cool. In any case, this game is winding down, and so are my thoughts on the Delny. You can see there we got a rather large torpedo hit on that battleship with our 8-kilometer torpedoes. I really like the Delny. I don't think I would call it the most effective destroyer at Tier 8 so far. It seems like the Sumner, the American Tier 8 destroyer, might be a little stronger of an overall package, but I don't have that one yet. I picked the Delny because I find this play style quite fun. And this ship does, unlike maybe some other Tier 8 tech tree ships, offer alternatives to the legendary tier, alternative. In the case of something like the Montana, well, you've got the main at Tier 8, and for all intents and purposes, they play very, very similarly to each other, and the main has less guns and the like. So I've seen people say, why buy the main at Tier 8 and play that when you can play the Montana at Legendary Tier? And, well, to that I would say variety is the spice of life, even if the degrees of difference between the two choices of ship aren't all that large. I'd still get the Tier 8, but if you're going to make that argument, or if that argument resonates with you, you might try to apply it to the why buy the Delny if you can play the Khabarovsk? Well, because the Khabarovsk is quite different. It is much more of a gunboat. It does have torpedoes, but they only have a 6-kilometer range, and the Delny is more like the Tashkent. Less guns, but longer range torpedoes. And I know some of you out there probably like the Tashkent, whereas you don't like the Khabarovsk for that very reason, to do with the torpedoes. Well, if that's the case, then the Delny is your ship. You might very much enjoy it. The only thing I would caution you against is building this ship for torpedoes. I don't really think it's meant for that. It is a gunboat through and through, and that is why I spec into the guns and don't worry about things like the poor concealment. There is an argument to be made that if you don't spec into concealment, the enemy destroyers will outspot you, and that is true. and that can sometimes make it difficult to deal with enemy destroyers and counter them, and you might find yourself mostly spamming battleships or cruisers, and in that case, that's not necessarily as valuable to your team as it would be if you were able to take out the enemy destroyers. But even so, even if they all beat you on concealment, you are very fast. If you get spotted by one and you use the RPF indicator skill with Perceptive, then you know where they're at, so you just sail toward them. You'll probably catch them pretty quick, and you are extremely well equipped to engage in trades with any enemy destroyer. You've got that 50 millimeters of armor to save you. You've got a very quick reload and very potent guns, and a lot of times enemy destroyers will mistakenly try to shoot at you first, and that is usually, it's usually a mistake. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.